Well, the breaking news of the night, reported by MSNBC's Ken Dilanian, who will join our coverage this hour, is that federal prosecutors have written a memo arguing against trying to charge former FBI Director James Comey with crimes. Donald Trump has publicly demanded that James Comey be charged with lying to Congress, which is only possible in the next 6 days before the statute of limitations would run out and make it impossible to charge James Comey on that. This week, Donald Trump forced out the U.S. attorney who he personally installed in the Eastern District of Virginia after that U.S. attorney refused to try to bring charges against James Comey. Donald Trump replaced that U.S. attorney.
All right, so you are not going to believe this. We've got 3 live wires sparking at once. The current president has been leaning on the Justice Department to go after James Comey before the clock runs out. A 12-foot statue of Trump holding hands with Jeffrey Epstein just got yanked off the National Mall under murky permit logic. An escalator gate at the UN went from thriller to slapstick the second actual facts showed up. Before we dig in, quick YouTube thing. If you want receipts with jokes, hit subscribe right now and tap like. It tells the algorithm to stop feeding propaganda cupcakes and start serving facts with punchlines. So, breaking news that actually breaks. MSNBC's Ken Dilanian reported that federal prosecutors have produced a memo arguing against charging James Comey because there isn't enough evidence to make a case that survives contact with a judge, and he flagged a hard deadline. The 5-year statute of limitations on a lying to Congress charge lapses in, like, hours, which is why the pressure campaign looks like a frantic last-minute cram session by a student who skipped the entire semester. Dilanian's thread lays out the timing. The Guardian's live blog repeated the point that the timing is everything here. And ABC News says the president just installed a loyalist, Lindsey Halligan, to take over the Eastern District of Virginia after the U.S. attorney he personally handpicked refused to bring the case. Translation, the career prosecutors say no probable cause. The political appointee with 0 federal trial experience says, hold my coffee. That's not me editorializing. That's what the reporting says on the record.
In a world saturated with information, finding the truth requires unwavering dedication and independent voices. America Facticity stands as a beacon for factual, unbiased reporting, delivering the stories that truly matter. Join our membership for just $9 a month. Your support helps us grow our team and create even better content. Find the link in the description below.
With a woman who has never tried a case of any kind in federal court and has never been a prosecutor, but did serve as one of the lowest ranking members of Donald Trump's criminal defense team. Donald Trump's attempt to illegitimately use federal power, including federal prosecutorial power, literally knows no bounds in either direction. There's no rule too small for Donald Trump to break and no rule too big for Donald Trump to break. And as you just heard today, Donald Trump had a statue of him and his pal Jeffrey Epstein removed from the National Mall, where the statue had a permit to appear this week until Sunday at 8 p.m. The National Park Service removed the statue this morning, as they said, due to it not being in compliance with the permit. But the National Park Service refuses to say how the statue was not in compliance. It's a 12-foot tall statue, as you just saw, bronze painted statue of Donald Trump and the man who said he was Donald Trump's closest friend for 10 years, the sex trafficker and raper of children, Jeffrey Epstein, who Donald Trump said was a terrific guy. The two men are holding hands in the statue and smiling at each other. That statue made Donald Trump the first president in history to have a statue of himself placed in Washington during his presidency. The National Park Service possibly violating its own permit rules to take down the statue is the least, as we said, of Donald Trump's abuses of presidential power. Last night, in a special election, voters in Arizona gave our first guest tonight one more member of the Democratic team in the House of Representatives. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries will be joined on the House floor by Democrat Adelita Grijalva, who won a special election for the House seat held by her father, Congressman Raul Grijalva, until his death in March of this year. That means one more signature for the discharge petition that can force a vote in the House of Representatives to release the Epstein files. Semaphore reports that Republican Congressman Thomas Massie is, quote, declaring victory on his move to force a vote on releasing the Jeffrey Epstein files after the election to fill a vacant Arizona House seat. And he says House Speaker Mike Johnson and some of the powers that be in D.C. are in full panic right now about it. They came back and tried to get the four of us to take our names off the petition, Massie told Semaphore after an event in his northern Kentucky district. They asked some of my colleagues who are co-signers, and they actually threatened them politically, not physically. Massie said if Johnson uses parliamentary tactics to evade a vote, that there's enough notoriety on this issue that people will know that he's sweeping this under the rug. He also said if there is language included in a bill to sideline the petition, those who vote for that bill are part of the cover-up. And the reviews are in for Donald Trump's deranged speech to the United Nations yesterday. Deranged was the word chosen by the British newspaper, the Daily Mirror, which also called Donald Trump the world's most powerful man-baby on the front page. The subheadline says Trump rants to the UN about climate, migrants, Gaza, Sadiq's Sharia London, escalators, marble floors, and teleprompters. The world's most powerful man-baby called for an investigation of why the escalator at the United Nations stopped while Donald Trump was on it. The UN complied and found that the Trump staffer assigned to record video of Donald Trump's escalator ride probably stopped the escalator by mistake as he walked backwards to at the top of the escalator. The United Nations issued a statement about the investigation, saying a subsequent investigation, including a readout of the machine's central processing unit, indicated that the escalator had stopped after a built-in safety mechanism on the comb step was triggered at the top of the escalator. The safety mechanism is designed to prevent people or objects accidentally being caught and stuck in or pulled into the gearing. The videographer may have inadvertently triggered the safety function and the safety function described above. The children at Fox rallied around the world's most powerful man-baby and decided before the UN investigation that the escalator problem and a malfunctioning teleprompter were sabotage.
Yeah, they sabotaged him.
Yeah.
And they could have hurt the First Lady.
Yeah.
Trump would have fallen and he would have gotten back up. But, you know,
they would have blamed it on his rhetoric.
And then they sabotaged the teleprompter.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an insurrection. And what we need to do is either leave the UN or we need to bomb it. It is in New York.
There were no threats from Donald Trump or his administration against the stupidest person at Fox saying we need to bomb the United Nations. Rupert Murdoch, the billionaire owner-operator of the Fox propaganda channel, had absolutely no problem with one of the people he pays to lie for Donald Trump advocating bombing the United Nations. Presumably, their defense is it was a joke. That is not a defense that Donald Trump and his thuggish administration accepted in the case of Jimmy Kimmel, who came back on television last night after Donald Trump tried to get him banned for telling a joke. All Donald Trump succeeded in doing is getting Jimmy Kimmel the largest TV audience possible last night. Rupert Murdoch's refusal in any way to restrict his propagandists who suggest bombing buildings in America is proof beyond a reasonable doubt that there are no standards of any kind for anyone working at the Fox propaganda network, and there never will be. But they will happily continue to try to ban other people from television on other networks. And speaking of deranged, Donald Trump's reason in writing for canceling a meeting with our first guest tonight is that Democrats want, quote, transgender operations for everybody. Those are Donald Trump's actual words in explaining why he canceled a meeting about the federal budget with the Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer and our first guest tonight, the Democratic leader of the House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries. Donald Trump has also said in writing the Democrats want to leave dead people on Medicaid and Social Security rolls. That's his other reason for not meeting with Hakeem Jeffries. Donald Trump also said the Democrats want crime. Now, no politician in American history has ever accused the other party of being in favor of crime. Many Republicans have claimed that they are tougher on crime. But think of how deranged you have to be to say that Democrats want crime. Does that mean Democrats don't lock their cars? Does that mean Democrats don't lock their homes? Donald Trump says so many deranged things like that in a day that it's impossible to keep up with them. Negotiating the financing of the federal government in bipartisan negotiations is something that every president in our lifetimes has done repeatedly. Prior to Donald Trump, everyone involved in such negotiations has always taken that role very seriously. Everyone involved shared some sense of responsibility to keep the government funded. But how do you negotiate with someone who has no sense of responsibility about anything? How do you negotiate with someone who has already violated the budget laws that you've already passed in Congress? How do you negotiate with someone who's deranged? How do you negotiate with the world's most powerful man baby? Now, we can all sit back and think it's impossible to negotiate with the man baby. And we are probably right. But there are some people who have taken an oath of office that prevents them from fully indulging the feelings that all of us might have tonight about the utter pointlessness of trying to negotiate with the world's most powerful man baby. Our first guest tonight has taken an oath that requires him to do exactly that, requires him to try to do what we all have a right to think might be impossible, requires him to try to negotiate with the world's most powerful man baby.
Here's the part where I remind you how normal presidents behave. Normally, you don't fire your own U.S. attorney for not inventing a crime on command. Normally, you don't swap them with your former defense team junior who has never tried a federal case, then rush indictments at the buzzer. ABC's sources say exactly that is the plan despite prosecutorial findings of no probable cause. That's not lawyering. That's Yelp reviewing the Constitution. Meanwhile, on the National Mall, something you could not script without your credibility catching fire. An anonymous art collective planted a 12-foot bronze-painted statue of Trump and Epstein hand in hand, smiling like prom dates, complete with a permit that was supposed to keep it up through Sunday evening. The National Park Service swooped in and removed it early, claiming it wasn't compliant with the permit. They declined to explain the non-compliance. Reuters and the Washington Post confirmed the installation existed, the early removal happened, and that the stated reason was a permit violation that remains mysteriously undefined. Axios quotes Interior's spokesperson, saying it wasn't compliant, period. Time has pictures from the mall. You don't need to like the art to see the pattern. When something embarrasses the powerful, the rules suddenly sprout a trapdoor. Now the UN, where the president tried to turn an Escalator safety stop into a Hollywood conspiracy. He accused the organization of sabotage, said the Secret Service is investigating, and demanded arrests, like Interpol runs on his caps lock key. Reuters printed the claim. Then the UN politely sent a note that a safety mechanism stopped the escalator because a videographer was walking backward at the top while filming the presidential entrance. They also said the teleprompter is operated by the White House, not the UN, and that the sound system worked for delegates on their headsets. That's not deep state. That's OSHA meets physics. The timeline is so clean, ABC and Reuters wrote it the same way. The Yahoo clip reel shows Fox's Jesse Waters joking that we should leave the UN or bomb it, which is a sentence any boss in America would treat as a fireable offense unless your boss is Rupert Murdoch. And yes, the speech itself was a ride. The president told foreign leaders, your countries are going to hell, called climate policy the greatest con job ever, and pitched a domestic golden age, where inflation, groceries, and mortgages are down, which would be adorable if rent didn't exist. Reuters, E&E, and CBS logged the con job language and the going to hell pull quote. Even Fox's own write-up had to quote him blaming a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter, which is quite a vibe for the world stage. If you were wondering whether you hallucinated the part where he bragged about a hat that says, Trump was right about everything, no. That line made it into the coverage too. Mid-roll, quick comment check. Are you seeing the pattern or am I losing it? Type pattern if you clocked how a safety brake became a coup and a permit became a mute button. Also, subscribe so you don't miss the next Meltdown breakdown. The way this week is going, we'll have 3 by breakfast. Let's zoom back to the Comey saga for a second, because this is the part where the legal slapstick meets the statute. MSNBC's Ken Delanian says the memo from federal prosecutors explains why charges shouldn't be brought. He also points out that the only charge that fits the president's public demand, lying to Congress, carries a 5-year clock. That clock runs out in days. Outside outlets, including Anadolu and The Guardian's live blog, are now parroting the same window citing Delanian's reporting. So if you see a rush-filed indictment landing like a pizza at midnight, ask a simple question. Did they have the evidence, or did they just have the deadline? While the West Wing was mainlining grievance about escalators and late-night jokes, Congress quietly added a new vote to the board. Adelita Grijalva just won a special election in Arizona to succeed her late father and becomes the first Latina Arizona has ever sent to the U.S. House. The Associated Press, Politico, and The Guardian all called it. Why does that matter in a show about jokes and escalators? Because her signature looks like the one that gives Rep. Thomas Massie the 218 he needs on a discharge petition to force a vote to release the Epstein files. Semaphore's scoop has the quote from Massie saying leadership threatened co-signers politically to peel their names off, and that Speaker Mike Johnson is in full panic. The Kentucky Lantern backed that up on the record with fresh reporting from his district swing. ABC News framed the Arizona result as the tipping point. That is what panic looks like in parliamentary clothes. Little reminder for the SEO gods and the lawyers who watch this show like it's CrossFit. According to a report published by CNN, station groups do have discretion in late-night scheduling, but what you're seeing now with Kimmel's selective blackout across dozens of markets is not normal. According to ABC News, Kimmel's return monologue argued that trying to silence comedians with government pressure is anti-American, which The Guardian also captured. According to Yahoo's Reel and Fox's own transcript, their hosts had zero problem joking about bombing the UN building in New York City. That's not me stretching. That's literally the bit. And yet the only person the government tried to silence this week was a comedian. That tells you everything about power and fragility. The bigger through line is the jawboning. Variety documented the initial saber rattle from the FCC chair that there is an easy way or the hard way on licenses. Deadline logged the cleanup crew claiming it was a joke. Then, like clockwork, Nexstar and Sinclair preempted the show in market after market while posting carefully worded statements about monitoring. Axios DC listed specific cities that got the blackout treatment. Business Insider and People added more stations to the list. None of that proves a phone call from the president, but it doesn't have to. When officials hint, companies flinch. When companies flinch, viewers lose access. That's the play. Since we promised to connect the dots on the mall statue, here's the legal tell. The Park Service says it was not compliant with the permit and removed it early. The permit holder says the government never gave the required notice and that the size claim is pretext. The Washington Post calls out both claims. Reuters adds that the stunt came from a known art collective and that similar provocative pieces have survived in other cities under the same temporary installation rules. Axios quotes Interior's spokesperson and confirms the removal happened before the scheduled end. Time shows the piece as installed outside the Capitol. All of those can be true at once. There can be a permit, a supposed deviation, and a fast removal in the exact window when it helps the president clean up the optics polluting his news cycle. You don't need a conspiracy when you have incentives. Back to the speech for one last beat because the international reaction matters. A British tabloid put him on the front page under Deranged with the subhead, The World's Most Powerful Man Baby. I didn't write that. The Daily Mirror did, and international press reviews compiled by France 24 and others flagged it as the consensus overseas vibe. The headline exists, the front page exists, the embarrassment is portable, and while he was calling the green transition a con job, Europe and Asia were not taking climate notes from a guy who thinks a wind turbine is a haunted fan. Here's the punchline that is not actually funny. While all of this spectacle plays on loop, the budget cliff is right there. Reuters and the Washington Post said the president canceled a White House meeting with Schumer and Jeffries that was supposed to be about keeping the government open. PBS noted the House isn't even in session on the 29th and 30th. That is not governing. That is a vibes-based shutdown. And in the middle of it, the same political machine spent a whole day demanding an Escalator investigation and threatening to sue a network because a comedian told jokes. You could not make that up without getting notes from Standards. Let's land this. The memo says, don't charge Comey. The political appointee says, do it anyway. The mall statue had a permit. The government found a new reason to pull it early and won't say what exactly broke the rules. The escalator stopped. The UN says a videographer triggered a safety mechanism and the teleprompter was yours. The speech bombed abroad. Fox threatened to bomb the UN and called it a joke. Jimmy Kimmel told jokes. The government tried to sideline him and affiliates blinked. Thomas Massie says he has the signatures to force a vote to release the Epstein files. Leadership is reportedly threatening co-signers and hunting for procedural roadblocks. Those are facts. Reuters, ABC, MSNBC, CNN, Fox, The Guardian, AP, Politico, Semaphore, Axios, Time, The Washington Post. Pick your favorite flavor. The receipts are the same. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to America Facticity for more breaking news. Drop pattern in the comments if you saw how fast a safety break became a scandal and a comedy monologue became a federal case. Tell me your city and whether your ABC station aired Kimmel or swapped him for late news. Funniest 20-word line you'd add to his monologue gets pinned. According to a report published by CNN and confirmed across ABC News, MSNBC, Fox News, The Hollywood Reporter crowd via Variety and Deadline, and yes, even Daily Mail when the SEO gods demand tribute, we checked the facts and then roasted them. The escalator still stops at the top. The truth still climbs the stairs.
And remember, if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button.